pretty popular today. 10 a.m. Right, tomorrow. Exactly. That's crazy. Well, thank you very much, Claire, for joining. I really appreciate it. That's very kind of you. If we could figure out a way for us to hear your accent, that would even be better because I love a good Australian accent. But this is good for now. Parkland, North Carolina. So this is great. Let me review a couple things while we keep doing this. It's 7:02 on my clock. I usually try to start around 7:05 because, life makes it challenging to sometimes get here on time. But in the meantime, you can introduce yourself. Uh, the way these webinars are structured, the way that Zoom is set up, is the raising your hand feature doesn't seem to work because you can't speak. So I'm not sure why it's there. It's kind of annoying. But if you see, Lisa raised her hand. But if you submit questions via the Q&A box, and if you don't see the Q&A box on your little Zoom bar, then click the three dots, and then you should be able to see it from there. And you can just open that baby up and you can see the other questions that people ask, as well as if you have questions of your own, you can just add them in there. Sometimes I will see questions and I will respond pretty quickly, like during the presentation, but oftentimes I don't always concentrate very well when I'm distracted and I want the workshop to be really good. So I'll do most of the workshop and I'll leave questions till the end. So just don't worry if I didn't address it, just keep adding the questions in. I will not get off this call get off this, workshop until I've answered all of your questions. It's just it's one of my policies, so to speak. And also, I really enjoy your questions, and I want to help as best I can. So the workshop should be, around 60 minutes, and then if there are additional questions, I'll just stay for as long as you want. The chat is open, as you know, and I'm glad Melissa's excited to learn new tools because that's actually the whole purpose of doing this. So hopefully that will help. And so the chat is open. Feel free to connect with other people. I know we usually have a really supportive group in these workshops, and I love that. But just remember, in order for me to be able to focus on the workshop, I can't pay attention to the chat. So don't feel like I'm ignoring the chat. It's just because if I pay attention to it, I won't be able to do the workshop. And it seems like you all came for the workshop, and that seems like a good idea for me to do. So if you have questions, don't post them in the chat, post them in the Q&A. And oh yeah, and don't worry about taking notes or anything like that. I will be sending around uh, the resources tomorrow. So that means I'll send around the recording, I'll send around the slide deck. I have a few other resources from this workshop on what we're going to send you, and I'll highlight them as we go. And then anything that just comes up from your questions, I'll also add on there. And I send that out um, through Meetup's email feature, which I don't know if anyone receives. And I also post it as a comment in the workshop group. And so, and I'm sorry, I'll tell you why I'm laughing in a second. And so hopefully you'll get it that way. If you don't get it tomorrow, my email will be on one of these slides. Just, send me an email or something, or reach out to me on Meetup or wherever you want to go, and I will send those links over to you. Uh, Mandy uh, posted a really important question in the Q&A box, which was how much bourbon should I put in my eggnog? And so I laughed out loud because that was funny. One, because I barely drink. And so I'm probably one of the worst people to ask that question to. And two, uh, if you're going to be with family, the answer is probably a good amount, is my guess. And um, so I hope that helps, Mandy. I probably will not address that question later on, only because I will not have gained any more drinking experience during this workshop. Uh, okay, it's 7:06. I'm as ready as I'm going to be, that's for sure. Hopefully you are as well. And let's go. So we're going to be talking about handling your feelings during the holidays, tools for emotional management. I really want to help you be able to kind of face your feelings and be able to process them, but be able to do that in a way that is feels somewhat safe and comfortable while you're dealing with family during the holidays, but also for the rest of, well, not just 2025, but for 2026 as well. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Jeremy Schneider. If you don't know that, that is actually my name. I run a company called Build on Your Strengths. I help people recognize when the past is running their present and teach them new ways to respond when it shows up. My whole philosophy of these workshops is I want to help you grow your mental health portfolio. And what I mean by that is I want you to have an array of tools and skills and techniques that you can use when you need them. So there's a real intentional effort on practical tools. I want you to understand the concepts, but I want you walking away with practical tools and skills that you're adding to this portfolio so that you're more prepared for whatever comes next in your healing process. Excuse me, I'm a licensed what am I? I'm a licensed master of social work. See, I got distracted for a moment, and that's what happens. Family therapist. I am a certified life coach. I've written a book called Father in 40-Minute Snapshots. I don't think I've really explained what this book is about, I realized as I was preparing for this workshop. And so I thought it might be interesting if I just took a moment to do that. When my kids were growing up, especially when they were younger, I had to leave the house in the morning to go to work, and I took the Long Island Railroad to New York City every day. And what ended up happening for years and years was every day I wrote in the morning. I wrote about what was bothering me, what was going well, what the things that I was struggling with. And I took the best of those essays and I put them into a book called Fatherhood in 40-Minute Snapshots. 40-minute snapshots because my train ride is 40 minutes. And it was basically everything I could kind of get out in those 40 minutes. And I grouped them into kind of stages of parenting that I think would be helpful. And so, if that's a phase of your life that you're still in, it might be worth taking a look. I also have my memoirs coming up next year. Hopefully in the spring is when I'm planning on it. And it's called In My Rearview Mirror. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. I do workshops I do workshops on self-care, self-awareness, self-compassion, overcoming trauma, and using AI for your mental health. I also have a column in Psychology Today where I really focus on AI mental health. Sorry, Julie asked me a good question. Would your book work for grandparenting? I don't know, but I will say it can't hurt. I think a lot of the stuff that I was working on was stuff that was more um, like parent oriented, but I think the concepts and the ideas would still be good for a grandparent. But I do think that there's a privilege of being a grandparent that makes it hopefully a little bit easier than it does being a parent. I hope that I get to find that out. Um, and then I also do I have 3 free guides that I make available for free. They're the mental health starter pack. The address is there. I'll tell you a little bit more about those later as well. I don't know if any of you remember the show Mad About You, but this was a show, I think it was in the 90s. It was with Helen Hunt and Paul Reiser. And they were married couple, and it was just about like their life and relationship and dealing with parents and family. It was an excellent show. And there's a great scene in one of the early episodes where they've just spent the weekend with Jamie's parents, played by Helen Hunt. And they leave and she asks Paul, "How come my parents can still push all my buttons?" And he says, "Oh well, that's easy. They installed them." And like that's the best explanation I've ever heard about why it can be so challenging to be with your family during things like the holidays. It's not because they're malicious or they're mean or they're necessarily bad people. It's that they know the buttons to push because they built those buttons in the first place. That's how they raised us. And so when you find yourself like feeling like a kid again with your parents or feeling like a younger part has taken over, it's really important to remember that it's it doesn't mean that you've lost this growth that you've had, the work that you've done to get your life to where it is, right? It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that when you're in a similar situation where the buttons were originally installed, it's easy for the people who installed them to push them. Again, not necessarily maliciously, just that's how they were created. And so it's important to kind of remember that and remember that the fact that your buttons are being pushed and being aware of that and doing something about it, that's where you get that sense of empowerment that I'm going to talk about tonight. In our society, particularly in the US, and probably Canada to some extent. I have no idea about Australia, to be honest, so I will leave that out there. But most of us grew up hearing messages like, stop crying, don't be angry, just get over it, right? We learned that our feelings were a problem. We learned that our feelings weren't worth paying attention to, that we should ignore them, that we should try and distract ourselves from our feelings instead of actually dealing and processing them. And that's to me one of the challenges with social media is it's an incredible way to distract ourselves, but that's time that we could have spent processing. And what happens when we don't process our feelings is that they build up inside us. And that's really the core message of tonight's workshop. It's emotions aren't bad or weak. They're just signals that we're experiencing something. But every time we don't process our feelings, every time we don't deal with our feelings, every time we ignore them or distract ourselves from them, they don't go away. They get stored inside us. And that's the real challenge. And this is something I came up with again like 30 years ago when I was going through a real dark, depressive period in my life. And what I kind of came realized was that I was carrying the emotions of my childhood with me all the time. That even though it had been in the past, it was still inside me. And I called it a pool of pain. Now, it could be a pool of emotions, it could be a pool of anger, a pool of fear, whatever you want to call it. I am prone to alliteration. And so I liked pool of pain, and it just kind of stuck with me all these years. There's three kind of concepts to understand about the pool of pain, again, or the pool of emotions, however you want to think about it. I'm just going to call it the pool of pain because again, I like alliterations. Your pool of pain is constantly filling up. You have an interaction with someone, it doesn't go well. Boss says something not nice to you. You have an argument with your partner, or something goes wrong with the kids, or they're just having a rough time. All of that is essentially just adding emotional weight to your life, and it's filling up your pool. And at some point, your pool is going to start to fill up. And at some point, it'll start to overflow. And that's where life gets really challenging. It's when we start noticing that a commercial is making us cry, or that we're getting incredibly emotionally upset over something that seems so small, and we just don't understand why we're being so irrational about it. It's because the pool is full. There's no vacancy left. There's no room. And so even just the smallest drops of emotions, of pain, of sadness, of hurt, of anger, of fear, some spilling over. And so what we need to do is figure out, how do we process these feelings? How do we release these feelings? How do we express them in order to be able to manage them so that they don't control us? And that's what we'll be talking about tonight, in case you thought there might be another topic involved. So I wanted to ask you, and you can share this in the chat. I'll take a moment to actually look at this. How full is your pool of pain right now? From a scale of 1 to 10, how full is it? There's low, moderate, high, and overflowing. Oh, so just real quick, it looks like a lot of people are dealing with high or overflowing pools. And that makes me a little sad. I'm really sorry that you're dealing with that right now. 11, Tracy. Uh, so I'm delighted to see there are a few of you that are in the moderate. That's great. That gives you some margin of error entering the holidays. But ooh, three, sometimes two, minus one. Okay, now someone's just flexing, I think. They're just showing off. Sushma, nice. Uh, I do a lot of work. Mine has never been minus one. Um, 67. Sorry. Uh, so what, particularly if you're feeling your pool is high or overflowing right now, a lot of the suggestions that I'm going to give you, I would start doing daily, because you want to start taking, whether that's a cup or a bucket or something, and just start emptying out your pool so that you have a bit more of a margin of error. Thank you for sharing that with me. Let's go on to what's next. So, what I really want this workshop to do is to really focus on changing your relationships with feelings. I think we too often think about feelings as a difficult thing, as a something that shows weakness, or something that shows that we're not doing as well in life. And the reality is actually the opposite. The more we're connected to our feelings, the more we're able to deal and process with our feelings, the more likely we are to be able to enjoy our lives and experience it better. So the first thing, and for those of you that saw my cognitive management workshop, it's very similar approach. We want to be able to label our emotions, right? Just the way we want to label our thoughts. You are not your emotions, right? Labeling is really great because it creates a sense of distance, excuse me, between who we are, our sense of self, and what we think and feel. And so, right, a lot of you may be thinking, I'm anxious about the holidays. But you aren't anxious about the holidays. You feel anxious about the holidays. And I understand that sounds kind of like just a semantic shift, but it's a different feeling when you say, I feel anxious about the holidays. I am okay. I'll get through it, but I feel anxious about the holidays versus I am anxious about the holidays. This is what I am. There's nothing I can do about that. Again, it's I am angry, and you can say a part of me is angry. A part of me feels angry. I feel anger inside me. There's a great Irish phrase that instead of saying I am sad, they say sadness is on me. And I love that because, yeah, I'm being visited by sadness, but sadness will also go away and I'll be fine. And that leads me to the second part of this aspect of the workshop. There's been a lot of research on the physiological lifespan of emotions, and this is just going to blow your mind. Most emotions last about 90 seconds. That's it. You've never had an emotion that never went away. Emotions come and go. They're like watching clouds on a sunny day. They're just floating by. They don't stay around too long. The challenge is are the way we react to our emotions. That's where we get into trouble. We start ruminating about our emotions. We start obsessing about our emotions. We start thinking about what that actually means. We can't kind of let it go. That's what stays with us. It's our reaction, the story we tell about the emotion that lingers. The emotion has already moved on. We've kept it. So, thinking about experiencing your emotions, processing your emotions, expressing your emotions, this is where you're trying to do that, right? This, not that it's going to take you only 90 seconds to do it, but that a lot of times the emotion that you're experiencing is not going to last very long. So, the next part is really beginning to develop your emotional management skills. And the most important part of this is I find that most people don't have a very sophisticated emotional vocabulary. And that's not because people are stupid or anything, right? That's because in our society, we don't really talk about emotions. We kind of think there are three emotions: happy, sad, and angry, and maybe something else. Maybe there's five. But Brene Brown, who's a very famous social worker and researcher who's done an enormous amount of work into emotions, has found that there are 87 emotions. 87 emotions. How are you supposed to speak the language of emotions if you don't have the proper vocabulary? So that's one of the things that we're going to focus on. And what I will send you tomorrow is her list of the 87 emotions. She groups them into different categories, which I think are also really helpful. I will send that to you. And in that link is her book. She wrote a book called The Atlas of the Heart, which frankly I think is a beautiful title for a book. And the book is about learning emotions and understanding emotions. So I don't get any money from anything that you spend with Brene Brown, but if that's something that you're interested in, I think it could be really helpful. So I will send you that in my email tomorrow. So I think that's one of the things to really begin to think about is how do you identify, how do you name the different feelings that you have? And so one of the ways that I'm going to suggest that later on, there's an app. Also, everything I'm mentioning that as a resource, there's they're either free or I don't get any money from them. So please don't worry if you don't want to get it. That's totally fine. But there's an app called How We Feel. And again, I'm including that tomorrow. So even if you don't write it down today, you'll get it tomorrow. Uh, and it's a great way of checking in and acknowledging, identifying the feelings that you might have. And the app does it in a very simple way. When you check in, it has four boxes. Two are for pleasant emotions and two are for unpleasant emotions. And I think in each one, it's like emotions that are activating and emotions that are kind of more passive or low energy and high energy. And so there's positive high energy, positive low energy, unpleasant high energy, unpleasant low energy. And then when you click into that, you start to see this array of emotions that you can choose from, and it gives you the definitions of each one. It's it's a well done app and it's free, so um, hopefully it won't be any problem for you. So I think that's a really important component. For those of you who this is not your workshop with me, your first workshop with me, you know that I, at some point, am invariably going to talk about self-awareness. And I'm going to talk about the awareness arc. This is just a simplified version of how you build and develop self-awareness. It's called the awareness arc. The concepts are simple. It's why, what, now what. And it's really basically around awareness, understanding, and then intentional action and care. So let me walk through a little bit of this, and then I'll actually walk through an example, and hopefully that will help see it in a little bit more real way. So the first question you're always going to want to ask is why? And that starts when you notice some activation, some feeling, some reaction that you've had to an experience, to a person, whatever that may be. What am I feeling in my body right now? What emotion just showed up? Can I pause and say something in me is activated? Once you begin to realize, oh, there's an emotion, I'm feeling something, right? That's self-awareness. That's a connection to your body or to your heart that is aware, okay, I'm experiencing something. Now let's try and figure out what that is. That's the what part. This is curiosity. This is not judgment. So what just happened that stirred this reaction? What meaning or story am I attaching to it? Does this remind me of something familiar or similar to my past? And once you begin to get a handle on like that something has happened and what you're feeling and why it might have happened, then you start turning to now what, which is the awareness, turning it into a choice. What do I need right now? So I've realized I'm sad. What do I need right now? I want to understand what made me sad. How did I become sad? And then how do I treat myself now that I realize I'm feeling the sadness? What do I need right now? How can I care or comfort for myself? What do I want in this situation? And this third part is really emphasizing self-compassion. So again, many of you know, I think the two most important elements of healing are self-awareness and self-compassion, which, not coincidentally, is the my second workshop in 2026. So this, I think it's like January 14th or something. We'll see it later. I'll actually be focusing solely on self-awareness and self-compassion. And I might need one or two volunteers if someone wants to volunteer to help me out that day. Uh, okay, so that's the awareness. Let's look at an example. So, we're going to family dinners or we're staying with family members or they're coming visiting us, whatever it is. Someone's going to say something, right? Unfortunately, that tends to happen. So let's say you've experienced an upsetting comment, some not meant to be malicious, but it's an innocent sounding question that carries a little bit of dagger with it, right? Still single? Have you got a real job yet? Oh, that's an interesting parenting approach, that kind of stuff, right? So your first step is why is awareness. So if you realize, wait a second, like my stomach hurts or my face feels flushed or I've got tension in my shoulders or in my neck or whatever that may be, right? That's probably a sign you're having some emotional reaction. You want to start by identifying that emotion. Maybe it's shame, maybe it's defensiveness, maybe it's anger, and seeing what thought comes associated with that. Something like I'm a failure or I'm not good enough. Like that's shame talking. I'm actually going to do a workshop on shame in March. So basically, I'm just going to be doing a workshop on every topic we can think of. And if you have ideas, just let me know. Then you want to go thinking about the what. You want to get a better understanding. So why does it hit you so hard? Well, because this confirms that you're not enough. A, it has a past link. It links to your past, right? So it's a reminder of something that happened when you were a child. And again, that's the whole, like they know how to push the buttons because they installed the buttons, right? And then the truth is, maybe they're projecting their anxiety, maybe they have issues that they're concerned about, but it's not really a statement about your life. But when you're in that emotional reaction, you can't see that. But when you go through the why what process, you start to realize, oh, okay, this is my feeling. This is their feeling. I don't need to worry about that. Now I get to decide, well, what do I need in this moment and how do I want to respond versus just reacting? Right? So maybe you can say something like, I'm happy where I am, thanks. Or I like this life I've built. Or don't bother responding at all. Right? The key here, though, is particularly when you're with family, is how can you help yourself feel better? How can you give yourself a few moments? Does that mean going to the bathroom and just splashing some cold water on your face? Maybe doing some grounding exercises, which I'll cover a little bit later. Maybe it's, you know, doing some of the other techniques that I'm going to talk about. So just don't forget the care component because that's crucial. I've talked about dealing and processing emotions, and I kind of want to help you understand what that means and how to do that. And it really boils down to being able to express your feelings in a healthy way so you don't need to store them anymore, right? The whole idea is to take a cup or a bucket if things are really going well and getting that out of your pool so you have a little more maneuverability to experience new emotions and process them without them overflowing. So let's talk about some real emotional management techniques. I'm going to spend a good chunk of time on this, but if you have questions, fire away. I don't know if any of you saw the show Shrinking. I think it's an Apple TV Plus show. It's with Harrison Ford. It's actually a show about therapists, and it's not very flattering necessarily of therapists, but Harrison Ford has a really great idea where he talks about sometimes it's really important to actually schedule time with your feelings. So you schedule this time to sit with your feelings, and maybe you do that, you set a timer for 15 minutes. Now, I was really excited about this because I've been doing that for like 20 some odd years, and it was the first time I had heard it mentioned somewhere else. I was both excited and, disappointed that I wasn't a genius. And so I used to I used to set aside time to cry, right? I, I've mentioned before, I had a tough childhood. I have this pool of pain that I have, it was overflowing on a constant basis. And what I did was I spent a good chunk of time over, uh, it was like 6 or 8 months, maybe longer, where I just set aside time to cry every day. And it made a huge difference in my life. You may not need to do it at that level of intensity. In fact, most things that I do, other people don't need to do at that level of intensity. It's just one of the quirks of being me. But the idea of scheduling time to process your feelings is really valuable because you're essentially making an agreement with yourself that, like, hey, my feelings are important, but you know what? I'm going to deal with them between at this time. So during the rest of the day, uh, let me feel a little bit more stable, knowing that I'm going to be able to process those feelings at a specific time. what was really helpful for me and what I loved about that idea was just that, was the fact that it gave me a sense of stability that I didn't have in my life beforehand. By scheduling this time, I was anytime stuff came up during the day, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna process this at I did it at lunchtime. So I'm gonna process this at lunchtime. And so like it just we just had a good agreement inside myself that was like, okay, that's when I'm gonna deal with that. The question becomes like, if you can't just sit and cry like most people, right? Like most people just don't cry we're not actors, right? How do you get connected to your feelings in order to be able to schedule this time? And so that's the rest of this stuff I want to talk about here. One is music, right? I mean, that's what I did. I used Apple Music back then. I had an experience playlist folder, and in that experience folder, I had 15, 20 playlists of different emotions: agitation, anger, rage, sadness, loss, uh, confusion or uncertainty, things like that. And so I would just listen to them. I had a crying playlist. I would just listen to them based on what I was feeling in order to process it, or what I thought I might need to figure out what I was feeling. And it it just gave me a sense of management, right, over my feelings. Instead of like letting them just do whatever they wanted, I could help kind of curate a playlist of my emotions that help me process my feelings. If you haven't, if you don't have, if you've never done anything like this, I wanted to give you a way to start. And a simple way to start would be, as you're listening to music, does it bring up anything for you? So, like for some people, like starting with music from your childhood, like that may just bring up some feelings for you. They may be positive feelings, unpleasant feelings, whatever it is. But first, just make a playlist of songs that affect you emotionally. You don't have to really understand how yet. Just make a playlist. I called that's how I started. I called mine the train playlist because I would listen on the train when I was writing. And and so I would just move songs over. And then once I got a big enough playlist of all of these songs of emotions, then I started breaking them down so that I could really kind of pinpoint what I needed to feel, or just listen to them all and just sort of see what happened in terms of, would I feel more reactive to one kind of music than another kind of music, etc. You can do the same kind of thing with media, TV shows, books, movies, poetry, etc. Right? So for me, as an example, Field of Dreams. I don't know if you've ever seen Field of Dreams. It's Kevin Costner. It's he cuts down the corn in his farm in Iowa and he builds a baseball field. And I have never watched that show without crying hysterically for 20, 30 minutes. I'm basically, from the moment it starts, I'm in tears, and when it ends, I am that painful, body racking crying that lasts for 15, 20 minutes that I feel like I never can stop, even though it always does. I'm not going to watch that with somebody else. So that's something to think about, right? You want to be able to have time to do this on your own, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But there are moments from other movies, there are moments from TV shows that I know make me upset or affect me. And sometimes just being able to watch them is helpful in getting more in touch with my feelings and feeling more connected. And again, all of being connected to our feelings and feeling them and expressing them is all about just slowly emptying out the pool, just a bit. Some other ideas to think about. It can be really hard to express some feelings that have no language. So, music is a really good way to do that. But a physical release can be really good too. So, if you know that you feel a lot of anger, rage, even fear, sometimes that can be hard to articulate in words, but maybe punching a punching bag or punching a pillow, maybe going out and breaking branches. Again, my caution is just whatever you do, do it safely because that's really important. There are actually, I forgot all about this, but there are, in some cities, there are places where you can actually like pay to do demo, like break stuff. That is a incredibly cathartic process, right? There's no words, but you're just letting that stuff out. Smash rooms. Thank you, Aaron. There are smash rooms. So that's another thing to think about. For those of you who have seen my self-care workshops, I talk about something called time unencumbered by the wants and needs of others. And that's really what this process is all about. This is not something that you do when you're worried about other people. This is not something that you do when you're trying to impress someone or whatever it is. This is you taking time solely for yourself, to help yourself. And so that's what I like. For me, all of this is time unencumbered by the wants and needs of others. The way I was raised, I was taught other, meaning the other person, is more important than self. When I set this time aside, no one is more important than me. And this gives me a chance to really process these feelings and empty out. Again, you're not emptying out, but you're lowering the depth of this pool. For those of you that are creative, this is this is the perfect opportunity for you. I can't make music or art or anything like that, but if you can, this is so valuable. Being able to literally channel your feelings into some sort of creative expression, like it's it's going to make such a big difference for you. And you may think you may realize you do stuff like that already. And what I'm going to suggest is just do it with a little more intentionality. Understanding that you're going into this process with the aim of processing your feelings, of expressing yourself so that you're emptying out this pool. Whether it's music, art, movement like dance, uh, or writing, including interactive journaling with AI, which, as we know, I do workshop on. Uh, these are ways to express your feelings, but also express those feelings that don't have words. Because particularly the stuff that we experienced when we were younger, when we didn't have a language for it, it can be hard to have a language for it now. And so we might need these more creative outlets to be able to do that expression. And then this last component, the expressing and processing of our feelings can be incredibly intense. It can be draining, it can be exhausting, it can just be overwhelming. And so what we need to do is we need to do some self-care. The first step of self-care is often identifying the kind of care you need. Again, I do an entire workshop on self-care, so this is a really brief summary of that. The key here is you want to think about regulation or restoration. Often, when you are processing feelings, it can make us feel more connected to the past. In order to bring ourselves back to the present, in order to calm our nervous system, in order to lower our heart rate, we need to be thinking about regulation. That's things like grounding exercises, again, which I'll cover in just a moment. Breath work, sensory anchoring, muscle relaxation, things like that. If you're drained and depleted, then restoration is another way. And it's not an either or, you could do both, but just understanding what you need when you need it is really what's important here. So restoration is about rest and sleep. It's about doing activities that are fulfilling, that are enjoyable, right? That not just nourishing food, like eating healthy food is good, but nourishing your soul, right? Nourishing yourself is also what's really important. This can also involve connecting with loved ones who you feel safe with and comfortable with. And then let's look at these. Let's just do some grounding practices. We'll do one of these, but I'm going to walk you through all three of them. So the first one is really about 5/7 breathing. And again, as with everything that I teach, don't worry about doing it exactly that way. The important part is doing it. So if 5/7 breathing is difficult, you can do 4/6 or 3/5 or whatever you want. The goal here is to inhale and exhale longer than you inhale. So what I mean by that is you can inhale for 5 seconds, but then you should exhale for 7 seconds. If you do 4/6, you inhale for four, you exhale for six. Excuse me, the whole idea here is that our nervous system, our fight or flight, is based on hyping ourselves up. The exhaling, when we exhale longer than we inhale, that's sending a signal to our nervous system that, oh, we're safe. We're not running from that tiger anymore. We're okay. And so it helps it calm down. The second one is activate your senses. So this is commonly known as the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. But again, I'm just going to emphasize you don't have to do this exactly this way. You can do this however it works for you. So traditionally, it's 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 3 you feel, 2 you smell, 1 you taste. But honestly, if you just want to do 5 things you see and you start to feel more grounded, that's fine. If you want to do 10 things you see and skip the others, that's fine. The whole idea is the process of noticing this is my water bottle, this is my clock, this is my monitor, this is my speaker. Noticing what is here and now and focusing on it for a moment helps ground us to the present. So if that's you're doing that with 5 things you see and 4 things you hear and that's it, or whatever variation of this you want to do, that's totally fine. The last one is about palms together. Now you could do this again any way you want. I'm just giving you this example of placing your palms together. You can push them, right? So you can push them together and kind of feel the pressure on each of them. You can move your fingers. You can press your fingers together. Again, the whole purpose here is to get us focusing on this present moment and bringing us back from that past that we had gone to. Another thing you can do that I like is you can rub your hands together and create that warmth. And then sometimes just putting it on your face can be a nice feeling. Again, you can do that however you'd like. Tonight, why don't we do the 5/7 breathing? We'll do about 10 of these, maybe 8 of these. I'll do the first couple with you, and then I'll go quiet, and you can do a few on your own, and then I'll close this out. So take a breath. You can keep your eyes open or your eyes closed, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, let's inhale for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Your turn. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Last one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I hope you feel a little bit calmer. And I just want to point out that took maybe 20, 30 seconds, maybe a bit longer. Just think about being able to do that a couple times a day. And that's something you can do without anybody watching, right? And no one has to know that you're doing that. So the last component of self-care I want to talk about is self-compassion. There are kind of three ways of thinking about self-compassion. One is self-kindness. This is, in some ways, the easiest one because what we really need to do is remember to speak to ourselves the way we speak to someone that we love. And I've mentioned this before in other workshops. What really got me to do this better was thinking about my kids, right? I would never say the crap that I say to myself to my kids if they came to me with a problem. And so if I wouldn't say it to my kids, why would I say it to myself? And so I really focus on that. Like, so I have some inner critic, something says something obnoxious to me, and it's like, yeah, that's that's not okay. I don't talk to anybody like that. I certainly don't deserve to be talked to like that. How can I talk to myself better? What can I say that is kinder and more caring and compassionate? And what would I say to my kids? So if you don't have kids, what would you say to a spouse? What would you say to a parent that you love? Anyone, a good friend, it doesn't matter. It's just what would you say to that person? And you deserve the same exact thing. The concept of self-compassion also involves this sense of common humanity. We've all struggled. Like everyone on the planet has struggled. And just because we're going through something now doesn't mean that we're alone. There are probably millions of people who are also going through a terribly difficult time right now. And that's not to say that we don't deserve to be upset. It means we're not alone. We're not the only ones suffering in this moment. And so maybe there's not that so much wrong with us as much as this is just a part of life. We're human. Part of being human is suffering. It won't last. It will go away. And we'll move on to bigger and better things. And then the mindful awareness, and that's where I talk about the sense of self-awareness. That's being able to care for yourself. That's being able to being kind to yourself when you know you're struggling. And just having that sense of awareness that, oh, I'm going through a difficult time. Here are ways that I can take care of myself. So I want to give you some examples for daily check-ins. I think the easiest way to start this is if you're comfortable, get the free How We Feel app and use the check-in feature. You can have it remind you a couple times a day. So maybe do one in the morning and one in the evening. And maybe start scheduling feeling time. You don't have to schedule all 15 minutes, or you could schedule 30 minutes, whatever you want. Even 2 minutes would be a good place to start. Pick one of the techniques that I went through, or pick one that is not one of mine, but resonates with you, like something that you may already do, but you don't do it on a regular basis, and try it. I understand that some people, when they first really start trying to feel their feelings and connect to their feelings, they like having a timer because it helps them feel like it's going to end at some point, whereas like keeping it open-ended can feel overwhelming. So go ahead. I think that's totally fine. Creating that structure can be really nice. But just remember, you still want to have that third component of self-care after you've done this expressing. And then in the evening, you could do another check-in and maybe write a few minutes about feelings you had that day. Maybe practice identifying feelings. So hopefully that'll get you off to a good start with emotional management. Again, we're really talking about being aware that you're having feelings and learning how to express them. We want to be able to monitor your pools, whether it's a pool of pain, pool of emotions, whatever it is. We want to help you understand how to label your feelings. We want to help you build your vocabulary. And just as a reminder, like, again, emotions aren't bad. They're just signals that we're experiencing something. We're reacting to something. And so let's figure out what we're reacting to, why it's happening, and then what we need and how to take care of ourselves. So that's tonight's workshop. Oh, look at that. It's 7:58. I got a whopping 2 minutes ahead of time. Uh, if you liked my workshop, I hope you take a moment to rate and review, please. I appreciate it. I know some of you do that after every workshop, and you'd be surprised how much that means to me. It's really helpful. And I think what it does is it makes it easier for other people to find them as well, which is really nice. So um, I wanted to tell you, so this is the last workshop of 2025. Aww. And it's going to be 3 weeks, I think, before I do another workshop. I'm going to start to have the jitters probably. That's a long time for me. But starting next year, I've already got, I think, 9 workshops scheduled out. So please take a look at my meetup community for all the details. But the first 4 for January are Beyond Bubble Baths, building a self-care system that works for 2026 you. So that's really focusing on self-care. So we did one slide of that tonight, but we'll go into much more detail. The second one is the 2 keys to healing in 2026, self-awareness and self-compassion. Um, that's I've never done that workshop before. I'm really excited about that one. Again, I think Tracy W suggested that she might be able to help out. If so, it's January 15th. If you'd like to help out, please let me know. Tracy just emphasized that with a yes, all caps, exclamation point. Thank you, Tracy. I'm One of the things that I think is really important is I feel like I talk a lot about self-awareness, but what that actually looks like in practice seems so abstract, I think, for people. And I'm hoping I think I've figured out a way to try and share what the self-awareness process for me is. We'll give it a shot. Hopefully it'll be helpful. And if not, y'all are always very nice to me, and so I'm not too worried about it. The third workshop in January is based off of my memoir In My Rearview Mirror. It's called Maybe It Wasn't Me When Healing Really Takes Off. Actually, that's so ironic. I think I just changed that title a little bit, but so it's maybe it wasn't me, but there's something else. I apologize. I These are a new kind of workshop for me. I'm going to be doing so just how I was talking about how I think there's a difference in understanding something abstractly versus being able to see an example of it based on someone else. And so, what I want to do with these workshops is use my story as an example for kind of how trauma impacts us and then what the healing process is like. So, I'll read a part from my book. It'll be short, I promise. It's not pages. And then that will be the basis of the workshop, and the workshop will build off of there. It'll still follow a similar process, but it'll be a lot more personal, and we'll kind of use me as a case study. And my my kind of philosophy is I'm not the right way to heal, but I might have a blueprint for your healing process. And what you need to do is like what I want to help you do is customize it so it really meets your needs. So that's what those workshops, I'll do that every third Thursday of the month. That's what those workshops will be about. And then this other new workshop that I'm doing is called the Monthly Integration Circle. And I would love to see a bunch of you there. I know a few of you have already signed up for the first one, which I really appreciate. This is here completely honestly, here's my thought process. I hope the workshops are helpful. I've gotten good feedback on them, but there seems to be something missing between the workshops and one-on-one coaching with me. And I think this is the answer. So this is a small group. I'm charging, oh, look, it says it's free. That's not true too. I apologize. It's a whopping $7. I tried to find a price that was like reasonable so that, but not too expensive. And the goal here is to have a group of people who are really more invested in the learning and growing and healing process. They attend one, two, maybe even three workshops a month, and they want to come and talk about what it's like to actually apply it to their lives. And then I'll be there. It's not a workshop. I won't be presenting anything, but I'll just be answering questions and I'll be giving you ideas and we'll really talk about specific examples. And it's basically just like having a group session instead of a one-on-one session. And it's a heck of a lot cheaper. And so hopefully that kind of helps you begin to better able to apply the stuff that I talk about in these workshops into the real world. And again, I'm charging $7. It's not a lot of money. If that's a problem for you, let me know. But the reason is because I don't want 125 people there. So this will help keep that circle to a more manageable level. And the people that are really in it will be more invested and more care more about actually making real progress. If you haven't joined the monthly integration circle from Learning Tools, look at this. I'm just going to say it right here. $7. I'm sorry, Justin and Michelle. It's the monthly integration circle that is $7. I apologize for the confusion. Um, if you want to see more about my workshops, you probably are part of the community, but certainly please join the community. I also do well-being workshops for organizations. So if you work for a company, a nonprofit, whatever it is that you think might want these kinds of workshops in their workplace, please let me know. Connect me with someone. I'm certainly willing to cut a deal for someone who is a loyal workshop attender. So please let me know. it's a lot of the same kind of stuff, but just more focused on uh, employees, colleagues, workplace environment. There are a few other ways that are free to continue growing. So I have a Build on Your Strengths Facebook group. That was good. Um, so you can join that. I also have a Facebook page you can follow. I post my articles primarily on LinkedIn and Substack. And so if you want to check those out, I'm trying to publish probably 2 articles a month. That's challenging because I'm doing 4 workshops a month, but we'll see. We'll figure it out. I mentioned the 3 mental health guides. So there's the self-care guide, there's the awareness guide, and there's a mindfulness meditation guide. They're all free. I also offer a clarity call, which is basically like a 30-minute mini session. If you have questions about how this process is, you can talk to me. But honestly, most people just come in and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. And we talk about it for 30 minutes. I ask them if they have any questions about the process. I won't let you schedule at on the call. I will send you a follow-up email with the information that you need so that you can schedule the call if you want without pressure, or you cannot schedule the call and no harm, no foul. So if that's something that you're interested in, feel free. I do have something called the Build on Your Strength Studio. And so this is where a lot of my older workshops are, or previous workshops. I also have workbooks and specialty bundles. I have a December discount code, which is healing. So if you want to check that out, that would be great. I'm going to highlight just the one about sleep because I know that's a big issue for a lot of people. So it has a full workshop that was actually a paid workshop I did previously. And so you get that as part of this. But then there's also a sleep workbook that I created that obviously goes together. And so that should be really helpful if you're interested in getting some help for sleep. The whole thing is $27 before your 25% discount. I don't do math, but so that's like a quarter of that off. So hopefully that makes it a little bit easier. I do individual coaching. Um, Again, if you want to get started with coaching, you can certainly just start with a clarity call because it's free and we can see where we go from there. And then I think that's it. And so I'm going to review quickly to see about see about questions, apologies, because I know that there weren't a lot of questions. And so if you have questions, feel free to chime in now. Again, if you raise your hand, I won't be able to hear you. So you can just post your questions in the Q&A. Um, so let's see. Yes, someone emphasized only voice your feelings to people you can trust. That is excellent advice. Uh, Clara from Australia, if I remember correctly, mentioned that emotional disconnect is not a geographically based problem. It's not biased, it occurs anywhere and everywhere, which is both good to know and sad. Um, Someone said they used to set aside times for my feelings when going through a tough divorce and attended rebuilding meetings. So I think that's a really good example. I would suggest that that's something you people probably want to do, maybe not on a daily basis if you're not really going through so much, but on a more regular basis. But particularly when you're going through a tough time like a divorce, you really want to set aside time to process your feelings because it will make the rest of your life just that much easier. Tracy is being nice and kind to me again, which I am incredibly grateful for. Um, Julie says make an appointment with grieving, which is perfect. That's exactly what we're talking about. Thank you again, Aaron, for Smash Rooms. Uh, See, now I got to look up the Limp Bizkit song. Okay, break stuff. Uh, Aaron said, "Oh, I think this was about the breathing, that she builds it up more in her mind, the obligation of time to breathe." Yeah, I mean it's crazy because it's really just 30 seconds, but it seems like it's a production. I totally get that. Um, oh yeah. Tracy's talking about the Michael Jackson is like musical Prozac. That's awesome. It helps me discharge anger, anxiety to dance around in my apartment. Yes, that's exactly a fantastic tool. Uh, any other way to access the workshops if you can't make it on Thursdays? Yeah, so for some reason, I just started scheduling them on Thursdays and then it seems to work out. So I kept scheduling them on Thursdays. Uh, but I will always have the recordings. I won't be recording, or I certainly won't be sharing the recordings of the integration circle. I need to think about that, but I don't think I'll be doing that. But I'll share the recordings of the other ones. If Linda, you're asking about the integration circle, um, we might be able to figure out something else. I need to think about that too, but feel free to reach out to me. Again, if you don't, uh, I'm just trying to find where I put my email address. Here. So my email address is here. It's jeremy@buildonyourstrengths.com. So if you want to reach out to me or have any questions, please feel free. Um, aw. Someone said they had a meltdown today and talked with their husband about anxiety and the holidays. He doesn't show much empathy, and I feel unheard. How can I feel heard when I'm processing emotions by myself? That's a great question. And I think one of the things that you'll start to experience as you begin to process emotions for yourself, by yourself, is that you will feel heard. You will feel like you're being really honest with yourself and genuine with yourself. And I think the more that you, like, just like with any other practice, with any other skill, the more that you set aside time to express and process your feelings, the more comfortable with it that you get. And I think part of the challenge of a lot of us, particularly those of us who may have been hurt when we were growing up, is that there's this sense that we need other people to take care of us, to hear us, to see us, to feel like they understand us, maybe to rescue us. And I think the reality is that as adults, as kids, right, we couldn't rescue ourselves. It wasn't possible. But as adults, we can. We're just not used to thinking that way. We're used to thinking that we need someone else to do that for us. But we can do that for ourselves. We can be the person that cares for us. And I think that's what you start to experience when you really embrace your own feelings. Because think about it, by ignoring our feelings, we're basically not even hearing ourselves. So when you start to do that, you're really building a better connection with yourself. Linda asked, it is 7 p.m. Eastern time. Yes, it's always 7 p.m. Eastern time. And I am so, what's the word? Time centric. And I'm really trying to work on that, Linda. And clearly I didn't do a good job. It is 7 p.m. Eastern. So it's 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And in fact, I am traveling. I don't know why I'm just rambling at this point. I'm traveling in January. I am going from Florida to California. I'm driving. And so I'll be in a different city for each of my workshops in January, which will be fascinating and challenging and adventurous. So I'll give you a little update each week. Christine asks, hello, Jeremy. Do you do counseling with patients around their blocks in relationship attachment work? I'm interested in this. Yes, I do. Um, so Yeah, I mean we can connect. If you'd like to make a clarity call, like schedule a clarity call, again, it's free. It's 30 minutes. We can chat about it and see what you want to go from there. And especially because, it looks like you're from Canada. So that's great. Uh, we covered that. Trauma bond narc. I feel like I didn't understand that one, Michelle. I'm sorry. What is the name of my book? So the fatherhood book is Fatherhood in 40 Minute Snapshots. My memoir, which again is not out yet, but it's going to be out in the spring, is In My Rearview Mirror. Because once you were in my rearview mirror, I started healing better. Hope I didn't give away anything there. So someone asks, how do you handle rejection from family and friends that don't make you a priority? I think two things. There's usually two things. One is first, you got to acknowledge that it hurts. Whether you want them to connect with you or not, it does hurt. And when we're just like, oh, but it's not a big deal, we'll be fine, we're just adding that pain to our pool of pain. And so give yourself time to process that. You don't have to do it with them. You can just do it on your own if you want. And then that gives you a chance to care for yourself. That third step, right? Chance to care for yourself, be compassionate with yourself, and kind of figure out what you want to do. Do you want to join them anyway? Do you want to make an effort to be a part of that? Or do you want to go do something else on your own that will make you feel better? Um, so that's a thought. Michelle responded by saying, "How about trauma bond narcissist?" I really thought Michelle was like calling me out, calling me a trauma bond narc, and I was like, I don't know if I know what that is. Um, Trauma bond narcissist. I feel like maybe this is about a book. I feel like I'm just not getting you, Michelle, and it's not you, it's me. I apologize. Um, So I'm sorry. You can try one more time if you'd like, or just you can just tell me to go to heck. Uh, Linda, yes, all times are Eastern. I will endeavor to make that clearer. Brenda asked, do you have any other suggestions for self-regulation in social settings? Recently, I found myself speaking sporadically because I was triggered in a social setting, and now I realize that what I needed to do in that moment was regulate myself. Exactly. So, first of all, great example of self-awareness. You knew something was off. You may not have known what to do about it yet, but you knew something was off. That's self-awareness. So important. Now you're like, well, wait a second. I'm getting triggered in social settings. I need to regulate. Awesome. So there are, I will be covering all of this in the first workshop in January, but some good examples of regulation are like those three things that we did. So the breathing exercise, the um, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. I can't think of what else to call it. But so where you're noticing things and grounding yourself in those moments. So let's just say you're out to dinner, right? And something happens and you start to feel yourself being triggered. So instead of like, out loud looking at something, what you can do is start noticing the way the water moves in someone's cup or the liquid moves in someone's cup. You can notice the movement of the wait staff. You can like count forks or knives. Again, what you're trying to do is just find things that help ground you to the present. And one of the best ways to do that is to just focus on the objects that are around you, because that will help. First of all, that will just help you calm down a little bit, but also that counting or that noticing will help ground you. And then the third thing I talked about was the hands. So you could do something like that under the table, but you could also just like, I have sometimes I have a rock. I don't know if you how well you can see it, but I have a rock. You could put something like this in your pocket and just like hold it and like squeeze it or whatever it is, right? You don't have to you don't have to do things that are incredibly obvious to other people. But just being able to have a couple of things that you can do will really help you feel more grounded and then give you a chance to like, okay, so this is how I reacted. I had that self-awareness. My understanding is that whatever that topic was upset me, or the way that that person spoke to me upset me. And then what do I do now? Do I go to the bathroom, or do I take a just I forgot something in my car and I go to my car and I sit in there for 2 or 3 minutes and I practice breathing. Like, just there are these little things that you can do once you have that awareness, which Brenda, you do, which is great. So I think once you start to do that, you'll start to see other ways that work for you to ground yourself back to the present. And that will help regulate you. If that didn't help, Brenda, let me know. Aaron says, I think a class around adults who are dealing with the real world results of having been parentified would be helpful. How do you downshift? I'm in therapy and have been on and off for years, but I would welcome your perspective. Uh, so parentified is the idea of that our parents kind of put us in a position to be the parents or to be the adult. And it's kind of hard to change that when you've been doing it for decades. And so I'm guessing that's where Aaron is. Um, I think the one of the more important things when you're thinking about parentified is the concept of other versus self. I touched on this earlier, but the idea that when we've been parentified, we often think of things in terms of like, well, it's important that I do this for them versus think about what it is that I need and want in this situation. So that slowing down, I love the way that I'm still holding onto this rock for grounding. Thank you, Aaron, for that. Um, or thank you, Brenda, for that. Sorry. So Aaron, like when you're thinking about whenever you're put in a position to do something, I think one of the first things you want to try and figure out is, are you doing this for other or are you doing this for self? And part of the way you do that is you slow it down. That whole awareness arc is the same kind of idea, right? Why am I doing this? What's happening? What am I feeling? Do I feel pressure to care for others? Do I feel this responsibility, this burden to take care of others? Do I feel like someone is putting pressure on me? Will they think differently about me if I don't do this? Right? Kind of understanding all of those scenarios and then being able to slow down and say, okay, but in this situation, do I actually want to be the one that does care for everybody else? Or do I need something else for myself? And you may decide that you want to be that person that cares for other people. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but what I'm saying is that then maybe you start thinking about, okay, how do you care for yourself so it doesn't hurt so much? It doesn't wear you, it doesn't drain you. So I think there are a lot of components there. And again, Aaron, if you want to talk more about this, you can reach out to me or feel free to schedule. Um, so someone asked if they could give me a call or email me. I say just email me. Use my jeremy@buildonyourstrengths.com email address, since that is my email address. And I be happy. Or you can schedule a clarity call and we can talk on video. Um, oh yeah. So Brenda, that makes total sense, right? As soon as you focused on the process of eating, that kind of helped ground you and you felt a little bit better in that situation. Someone asks, how do you now say what's on your mind when someone is disrespectful? So again, it depends a lot on the situation, but one of the things to really think about is, and I know I sound like a bit of a broken record, but that awareness arc, right, helps you get to I feel hurt or I feel shame or I feel defensive or angry that that was a disrespectful thing they said to me. And then this is why it's bothering me because it makes me feel like this is what it was like when I was a kid. I was always disrespected, or they never took my opinion and valued it, or whatever it is. And then that third step of, well, what do I need? How do I care for myself? And what do I want in this situation? So again, each situation is going to be somewhat different, but if you want to set a boundary in that situation, being able to set that boundary after you've realized why it's upsetting you and being able to say, you know what, honestly, I don't appreciate you talking to me like that. I think we were having a nice conversation. I feel like I've been respectful to you. All I'm asking is for the same. If that's a real challenge for you, then we need to figure something else out. And it does by having a choice and being able to think about what you want to say, so responding instead of reacting, what you end up getting is a more mature, more adult, more self-oriented response that is going to put you just in a better position to be able to handle whatever happens. I hope that helps. That seems to be all the questions. If you have any other questions, type quickly. I'll count to five. Five, four, three, two, one. Okay. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it. You're another just I enjoy doing this. I hope you enjoy it at least close to as much as I do. I will see you in about 3 weeks. In the meantime, have fabulous holidays. Please take good care of yourselves. And if there's anything I can do in the interim between we see each other again in January, email me. Okay. Take care, everybody. Happy New Year.